All right, let's do this. Dostoevsky, here we come. We're diving deep into the brothers Karamazov today.
Oh, you picked some juicy sections, that's for sure.
Yeah, we're going to focus on like the really good stuff. No slogging through the boring parts, right? We're talking big philosophical questions, family drama that'll knock your socks off, and, oh yeah, little murder mystery thrown in for good measure.
It's like Dostoevsky threw all his best ideas into a blender, and this is what came out. You'll be seeing questions of faith and freedom, morality turned on its head. It's a wild ride.
Okay, I'm already hooked. But before we go any further, let's back up a bit. Who are these Karamazovs? They sound like a family you wouldn't want to mess with.
You got that right. First up, you've got the father, Fyodor Pavlovich. Think of him as a walking scandal, a guy who lived life on his own terms, no matter who he hurt along the way.
Sounds like a real charmer.
Yeah, not so much, but he definitely makes things interesting. Anyway, he's got 3 sons, and each one is completely different from the others.
Okay, I'm sensing some serious family drama brewing here. Give me the rundown on these brothers.
All right, so the eldest is Dmitri. He's all heart, all passion, but kind of impulsive, you know? He's the type of guy who leaps before he looks, and that gets him into trouble.
I can see that. What about the second brother?
That's Ivan, the intellectual. He's always questioning everything, trying to figure out the meaning of life, you know? But sometimes his thoughts take him to some pretty dark places.
That's interesting. So we've got the passionate one and the thinker. What about the youngest?
The youngest is Alyosha. He's more of a spiritual type, drawn to the monastery and searching for answers in his faith.
Wow, talk about a mixed bag. I can already imagine the arguments at the dinner table. But wait, there's another son, right? Smerdyakov.
Ah, Smartyakov. He's the wild card, Fyodor Pavlovich's illegitimate son. He's shrouded in mystery, but let's just say he's going to play a crucial role in how this whole story unfolds.
Ooh, I'm intrigued. But we're talking about Dostoevsky here, so it can't just be all family drama, right? Where does the deep stuff, the philosophy, come in?
Oh, don't worry. Dostoevsky doesn't shy away from the big questions. He throws us headfirst into these intense philosophical and religious debates, and Ivan is our guide.
Okay, give me a taste of what Ivan's grappling with. What kind of stuff is he questioning?
Well, there's this really powerful scene where Ivan is confronting a church elder. He's basically laying out all his doubts, all his anger at the suffering he sees in the world.
He sounds like a bit of a rebel.
Oh, he is. He's challenging traditional beliefs, pushing back against authority. It's a real clash of worldviews.
I'm picturing some serious sparks flying. What's the core of his argument? What's he got against the church?
He's struggling with the problem of evil, you know? He just can't accept a world where innocent people, especially children, suffer so much.
Yeah, that's a tough one. So what's his solution? Does he have one?
Well, he doesn't have all the answers, but he goes so far as to say that he'd rather reject the whole idea of heaven if it means being complicit in a system that allows for such pain.
Whoa, that's a bold statement. He's essentially saying he'd rather be wrong than accept a God who allows for suffering.
It's a radical stance, and it really shakes things up. And, you know, Dostoevsky is really clever here. He's not necessarily saying Ivan is right or wrong, but he's presenting his arguments in a way that makes us confront those uncomfortable questions ourselves.
It's like he's forcing us to think critically, to challenge our own assumptions about faith and morality.
Exactly. And remember, this is all happening within the context of this gripping murder mystery, so the stakes are even higher.
This is already blowing my mind. But it can't all be doom and gloom, right? There's got to be some kind of counterpoint to Ivan's cynicism.
You're right, and that's where Elder Zosima comes in. He's this revered spiritual figure living in the monastery, and he represents a completely different approach to life.
Okay, so he's like the anti-Ivan.
In a way, yes. Zosima embodies this radical love, this unwavering belief in forgiveness, even for the worst sinners.
That sounds like a tough sell, especially in a world as messed up as the one Dostoevsky is painting.
It is. But Zosima is a powerful figure. He represents this glimmer of hope in the midst of all the darkness, and his death scene, oh man, it's a real turning point in the story.
Okay, now I have chills. I need to hear more about this.
It's this incredibly powerful moment where Dostoevsky shows us the range of human responses to death, to faith, to loss. Some characters are devastated, others are skeptical. It's all very human, very real.
I love how Dostoevsky doesn't shy away from those messy, complicated emotions. It's what makes his characters feel so real, so relatable. But wait, before we get too deep into the spiritual stuff, I gotta ask, what about the romance?
You're right. We can't forget about the love triangle. Dostoevsky throws that in for good measure.
I knew it. Spill the tea. Who are the key players in this romantic entanglement?
Well, first you've got the captivating Grushenka. She's a bit of a femme fatale. And both Dmitri and their father, Fyodor Pavlovich, are completely smitten with her.
Well, look, the father and son are both into the same woman. Now, that's what I call family drama.
It gets pretty messy. Grushenka is this complex character, beautiful, strong-willed, but she's also been through a lot, so she's got this vulnerability about her that makes her even more alluring.
I bet she stirs up a whole lot of trouble.
Oh, you have no idea. And then there's Katerina Ivanovna, Dmitri's fiancée.
Wait, Dmitri's engaged, and he's still chasing after Grushenka. This guy's got a lot going on.
He does. And Katerina Ivanovna, she's a fascinating character, too. At first, she seems like this pure, virtuous woman, almost saintly. But as the story goes on, we see that she's got her own complexities, her own demons to wrestle with.
Okay, so we've got a seriously dysfunctional family, philosophical debates about the meaning of life, a simmering love triangle. What else could possibly happen?
Well, remember that murder mystery I mentioned? Brace yourself, because things are about to get dark.
Uh-oh, I knew something bad was coming. Who gets murdered?
None other than Fyodor Pavlovich, the patriarch of this chaotic family.
No way, the father is murdered. This is getting juicy. So who did it?
Ugh, that's the million-dollar question. And of course, Dostoevsky doesn't make it easy for us. Suspicion immediately falls on Dmitri, but as with everything in Dostoevsky, the truth is far more tangled than it first appears.
I knew there had to be a twist.
Okay.
So Dmitri is the prime suspect, but there's more to the story. I'm hooked.
Oh, we're just getting started. And remember that young Kolya Krasotkin we mentioned? He might be just a kid, but he's got a surprising role to play in all of this.
A kid in the middle of a murder mystery. Dostoevsky, you've really outdone yourself. I can't wait to see where this goes.
Buckle up, because we're diving deep into the heart of Dostoevsky's world. And trust me, it's a journey you won't soon forget.
So we've got Ivan questioning the very existence of good and evil, and we've got a murder mystery heating up. This is intense. Where do we go from here?
Well, Dostoevsky doesn't let up on the gas, that's for sure. Dmitri, fueled by his passion and probably a little too much vodka, finds himself in a whole heap of trouble.
Yeah, he was already a prime suspect. What's he doing now?
Basically, he's on a mission to clear his name and win over Grushenka. But in the process, he makes some really impulsive, even reckless decisions.
Sounds like he's digging himself deeper into a hole.
Exactly. He's spending money he doesn't have, running all over town, acting like a man on the verge of a breakdown.
It's like he's spiraling out of control.
You got it. He's driven by this desperate need to prove his innocence, but his actions are making him look even more guilty.
So while Dmitri is imploding, what's Ivan up to? Is he still lost in his philosophical thoughts?
Ivan is fascinating. He's definitely affected by the murder, but he processes it all very differently than Dmitri.
Yes, so.
Instead of these emotional outbursts, Ivan retreats further into his intellect. He's trying to make sense of this horrible act, but through the lens of his own nihilistic worldview.
So while Dmitri is losing control, Ivan is retreating into his mind.
Exactly. And remember that poem he wrote, The Grand Inquisitor? Well, those ideas, those doubts he was wrestling with, they start to bleed into his real life.
That doesn't sound good.
It's not. Ivan begins to question everything. The existence of good and evil, the meaning of life, you name it. It's like the murder has shattered his already fragile sense of meaning.
It's like he's having a full-blown existential crisis.
It's intense. He has these vivid, almost hallucinatory encounters. His mental state really starts to deteriorate as the trial gets closer.
So he's got Dmitri falling apart emotionally, Ivan teetering on the brink of insanity. It's all pretty bleak. Is there any light in all this darkness? What about Alyosha?
Alyosha is struggling too, but in a different way. He's deeply disturbed by the murder and the suffering it's caused, but he's holding on to his faith.
It's like he's the only one trying to find some good in all of this.
He's definitely the moral compass of the story. He sees it as his duty to offer comfort and support to everyone, even those who seem lost or beyond redemption.
He's putting Elder Sosma's teachings about love and forgiveness into action.
Exactly. He's constantly tested, but he keeps trying to see the humanity in everyone, even in the face of this horrific crime.
That takes a lot of strength. What are some of the challenges he faces?
Well, Grushenka, for one, she's caught in this web of desire and manipulation, and her relationships with both Dmitri and Fyodor Pavlovich have really devastating consequences.
That love triangle was bound to explode. How does Alyosha get involved?
Despite all her flaws, Alyosha sees the good in Grushenka. He recognizes her pain, her vulnerability, and he tries to offer guidance and support.
He's trying to help her even though she's a mess.
She is a mess. But she's also capable of love, of change. And Alyosha believes in her, even when she doesn't believe in herself.
He's a better man than I am. So we've got these brothers all dealing with the fallout of the murder in their own way, but what about the murderer himself, Smerdyakov? We know he did it, but why?
Smerdyakov, he's a real piece of work. His backstory is just as fascinating as his present actions. Remember, he's Fyodor Pavlovich's illegitimate son.
Yeah, the one who was always treated like an outsider.
That's him. And that fact has haunted him his entire life. He's full of resentment and anger toward his father, and that definitely plays a role in the murder.
So it was an act of revenge.
Partly, yes, but it's more complicated than that. Smerdyakov is also driven by this desire for power, a need to prove his own worth to a world that's always looked down on him.
So he's lashing out, trying to make a statement.
Exactly. And Dostoevsky uses Smerdyakov to explore the darker side of human nature, that capacity for cruelty and manipulation that we all have within us.
So we've got Dmitri on a downward spiral, even questioning everything, Alyosha desperately trying to hold on to hope, and Smerdyakov lurking in the shadows. Where do we go from here?
The investigation continues, and more evidence comes to light that points to Smerdyakov's involvement. But remember, this is Dostoevsky, so nothing is ever straightforward. Get ready for some twists and turns.
I bet. But before we move on, I want to go back to something you mentioned earlier, the connection between Smerdyakov's epilepsy and Dostoevsky's own experience with the condition.
Oh, that's a really interesting point. Dostoevsky suffered from epilepsy throughout his life, and it definitely informed his writing.
In what way?
Well, in Smerdyakov's case, his epilepsy seems linked to his psychological state, his distorted view of reality, his capacity for violence. It's like the seizures are a physical manifestation of his inner turmoil.
So it's not just a physical condition, but a psychological one, too.
Exactly. And Dostoevsky doesn't shy away from the darker aspects of epilepsy. He shows us the seizures, the hallucinations, the loss of control.
So he's using Smerdyakov to explore those experiences.
In a way, yes, but he's also interested in the spiritual dimension of epilepsy. Some people with the condition experience moments of heightened awareness, even ecstasy.
That's fascinating. It's like he's showing us the full spectrum of human experience through this one character.
Exactly, and that's what makes Dostoevsky so compelling. He doesn't shy away from difficult topics. He embraces the complexity of human nature. He shows us the good, the bad, and everything in between.
Okay, well, I'm ready to keep going. What happens when the truth about Smerdyakov comes out? How do the brothers react?
Well, the truth has a way of shaking things up, and it definitely doesn't bring peace to the Karamazov family. Each brother has to confront the truth in his own way, leading to more confrontations, more moral dilemmas. It's a real roller coaster.
I bet. And what about Kolya Krasotkin? Does that little spark of youthful idealism still shine through all this darkness?
Oh, absolutely. In fact, Kolya becomes even more important in the last part of the story. Just when everything seems hopeless, he emerges as a reminder of the power of compassion and the possibility of change.
So even in the midst of all this tragedy, there's still hope.
There's always hope, and Kolya is the embodiment of that hope. But to see how it all unfolds, we'll need to dive into the final act of this epic story.
Well, what are we waiting for? Let's keep diving. All right, we're back, and things are about to get real. The truth about the murder is out in the open, and man, these brothers are a mess. Dostoevsky's really digging deep into their psyches, isn't he? Showing us how this crime is tearing them apart from the inside out.
You said it. The murder isn't just some plot device. It's this earthquake that shakes everything up and forces each character to face who they really are.
So let's start with Dmitri. We left off with him spiraling, right? Consumed by guilt, even though we weren't even sure if he actually did it. What happens to him now?
Oh, man, it's rough. You see him just unraveling. It's almost like something out of Shakespeare, you know? The intensity, the drama of it all.
Yeah, I get it. But what's eating him up so much? Is it just the possibility that he might be a murderer?
That's part of it for sure. The guilt is there, even if he's not totally convinced he did it. But it's more than that, right? It's the weight of all his bad decisions, his reckless life, his messed up relationship with his father. It's like it's all crushing him at once.
It's like he's punishing himself before anyone else can.
Exactly. He's caught in this cycle of self-destruction. Okay, now what about Ivan? Last we saw him, he was having this total mental breakdown.
Yeah, questioning everything, wondering if anything even matters.
Well, his reaction to Smerdyakov's confession is, well, it's complicated, to say the least.
Okay, how so?
He's horrified, obviously, but then there's this weird sense of responsibility that kicks in, like almost like he caused the murder somehow.
Wait, hold on. Is he saying it's his fault? Like, literally?
Not literally, no. But he starts to wonder if his constant questioning, his rejection of God and morality, if that somehow created an environment where something like this could happen.
Like he made it okay to do something evil just by doubting that evil even exists.
It's a tough idea to wrap your head around, but that's Dostoevsky for you, right? Always making us think.
Okay, well, I'm starting to get a headache.
Don't worry, it's a good headache. So anyway, Ivan, he starts to really crack under the pressure. I mean, we're talking hallucinations, total mental collapse.
Jeez, sounds rough. So we got Dmitri drowning in guilt, even going crazy. Does anyone make it out of this? Okay, what about Alyosha?
Oh, Alyosha. He's the moral center of the story, remember? The one who's still trying to find some meaning, some hope in all this mess. But even he's pushed to his limits.
Yeah, I mean, holding on to your faith when everything's falling apart around you, that can't be easy.
It's not. But remember, Elder Zosima, those teachings about radical love and forgiveness, well, Alyosha, he puts those beliefs to the test. Big time.
He doesn't just talk the talk, he walks the walk.
You got it. He sees how much Dmitri and Grushenka are suffering, and he doesn't judge them. He just keeps offering them compassion, understanding, this belief that they can be better, even when they don't believe it themselves.
Wow, that's some serious strength, some serious faith. Does it work? Does he get through to them?
That's the question that hangs over the whole novel, isn't it? Like, does love really conquer all? Does faith really have that kind of power?
Yeah, Dostoevsky, he doesn't give us easy answers, does he?
Nope. He just lays it all out there, the good and the bad, and asks us to grapple with it.
All right, well, let's talk about Smerdyakov for a minute. So we know he's the one who actually did the deed. But I have a feeling there's more to him than just, evil villain, right?
Right. Like I said before, he's a product of his environment. Think about it. This guy, he's been rejected, looked down on, basically treated like dirt his whole life.
Yeah, they'll mess you up.
It will. And in a way, the murder, it's a twisted act of rebellion, right? Like he's finally trying to grab some power, make his mark on the world.
So there's some tragedy in there, some kind of, warped logic.
Absolutely. And Dostoevsky, he does something really interesting. He gives us these glimpses of Smerdyakov's humanity, these moments where you see his vulnerability, even as he's being cruel.
So it's a reminder that even someone capable of doing something so terrible is still a person.
Exactly. There's always more to the story than meets the eye, right? We have to try to understand the motivations, the circumstances. It doesn't excuse the act, but it gives us a more complete picture.
Well, that's heavy stuff. I need a minute to process all that.
Get your time. There's a lot to unpack here.
Okay, so I think it's time to bring back Kolya Krasotkin. He's our little ray of sunshine in this otherwise pretty bleak story light.
You got it. He comes in strong in this final part, like a symbol of hope and renewal.
I love that. So even though everything's gone wrong, there's still a chance for things to get better.
That's the message Dostoevsky's trying to convey, I think. Through Kolya, we see the possibility of a new generation learning from the mistakes of the past.
It's like he's saying, hey, even though things are messed up, we can still make a better future.
Yeah. It's inspiring, in a way.
Okay, so the trial. What happens there? I'm on the edge of my seat. Does justice prevail?
Well, I don't want to spoil it completely. Let's just say things don't exactly go according to plan. The truth comes out, sure, but...
What?
But justice. It's a lot more complicated than just guilty or not guilty. Dostoevsky, he's more interested in exploring what happens inside people's heads, The psychological, the spiritual effects of the crime.
Makes sense. So it's less about the verdict and more about the impact on the characters.
You got it. And that's what really sticks with you after you finish the book. Like, what happens after the trial? How does everyone pick up the pieces,
It's all about the aftermath, the long road to healing.
Exactly.
And that's where Kolya really shines.
Totally. He brings this energy, this optimism that's been missing from the story. It's like he's a catalyst for everyone to start putting their lives back together.
So as we wrap up this deep dive into the brothers Karamazov, what's the big takeaway? What do you think Dostoevsky wants us to remember?
Well, for me, it's about embracing complexity, recognizing that we're all capable of good and bad, that life is messy, and there are no easy answers.
Yeah, it's about facing the darkness head on, but still holding on to hope.
Exactly. Dostoevsky doesn't shy away from the tough stuff. He forces us to confront the big questions about life, about faith, about suffering, about morality, and he leaves us to wrestle with those questions on our own.
There's no simple answer key at the back of the book, that's for sure. But I think that's what makes him such a great writer.
I agree. He makes us think, makes us feel, makes us question everything we thought we knew.
Well said. And to our listeners, we encourage you to keep exploring Dostoevsky's work. It's challenging, it's rewarding, and it just might change the way you see the world.
It's a journey worth taking.
Thanks for joining us on this deep dive. And remember, the exploration of knowledge and self-discovery never truly ends. Keep those minds working, everyone.